Welcome back. On today's video, we're going to talk about the cost of ownership of a car. Now, many times when people buy cars, they look at the payments or what they can afford to pay at that time. If you've listened to any of my other videos, you know that I'm a big proponent of paying off your car, buying a cheaper car, a beater if need be, so that you do not have car payments. But a lot of people know, and car salespeople know, when people go in, they're looking at how much are the payments on the car, or how much can I afford to pay for this car out of pocket right now. And many times the cost of ownership is not considered. For example, I know a real estate agent who bought a nice BMW. It looked great, and she complained to several of her clients that she was not anticipating the cost of ownership, and it was always in the shop. Whether that was her, the way she drove the car, or just Beamers in general, I'm not entirely sure, although Beamers do require a lot of maintenance after they get out of certain periods. But that is something that people need to consider. So let's jump right in. We're going to touch on a few different websites. Now, before we jump into here too far, I'm going to say it now and I'll circle back to it. The car that's going to cost you the least to own is the car that you can work on. If you know it and know it inside and out, you'll be able to maintain that car far less expensive than mechanic shops. Some diesel mechanics, when I had a diesel pickup, would charge over $200 an hour to work on that truck. So be aware that if you're able to do the work on your car, this video is probably not the right one to be watching because you'll take care of it yourself. So this particular website, this is caredge.com, it talks about the brands with the lowest 10-year maintenance costs. And looking at the term of the maintenance is important, and as you'll see later when we talk about 5-year versus 10-year. This starts out with Toyota as number one. It talks about the Toyota 10-year maintenance. It doesn't say which model of Toyota, and that will matter, is $5,445. The next one, I do not believe at all. Fiats are known for being in the shop and having issues. However, they must have done some research and they came up with Fiats being slightly more expensive than the Toyotas by about $1,000 over the 10-year maintenance. Followed by Volkswagen, which again, I'm struggling to believe, and the other two websites that we'll go over here shortly also agree with me. But Volkswagen and Fiat are typically known for having maintenance. This may be because for the first 5 years they may have a maintenance plan, like Volkswagen, I believe, does offer a maintenance plan when you buy the car, which will bring the cost of ownership down. However, once you get outside of that and you start getting significant amounts of miles on that car, you're going to be paying more and more. Number 4 is Mitsubishi and number 5 is Honda. Generally, we expect that number to be flipped, but Mitsubishi in my mind is kind of the sleeper of the Japanese cars, where it does generally work very well. And I've known a number of people that have Mitsubishis, including my grandparents who had them for years and years and years and swore by them. But Mitsubishi rates on this chart as only $100 a year, over a 10-year period more than the Volkswagen, and Honda is only $100 more than the Mitsubishi. After that, you start getting down into the Mazda, which again is a Japanese car, $6,800 over 10 years. Hyundai, which is rather surprising, especially with the recent problems that Hyundai had, and that may be because it hasn't taken into account all of the issues that they had over the past couple of years with their recalls. Kia as well. I have known people that have had some Kias with very good luck and have lasted a while. Mini is surprising because Mini is known for having problems, and you have to find a specified shop or a specific shop that could work on them because they're not like a normal car and the engines are rather shoehorned in. Subaru is another one that is rather surprising because, again, people do love their Subarus. However, some do have some issues, and when you get in the higher mileage range, people do anticipate working on the newer ones. Some of the older ones seem to be bulletproof and went forever. And then we get into Nissan, who up until the last few years seem to be doing very well, but Nissans lately do seem to be having more and more issues. Hopefully they resolve that. Followed by Buick, Chevy, Dodge, Chrysler, GMC, Ford, Jeep, Ram, all of the American brands. Now, I'm not knocking American brands. I have a Jeep, I had a Chevy, I've got a Ford currently, but most of our daily rigs are Toyotas. So let's look at this a little bit more. Let's hop into this particular website. This is Kelley Blue Book, and they talk about the lowest 5-year cost to own. This is rated from 2023. We don't have the 2024 numbers on this site. And the number one that they came out with, or one of the ones on the list, I actually should say they don't actually rate these, is the 2023 Hyundai Venue. Now, I do need to make a note, this is the SUVs. We'll get into the cars down a little bit. The second one on their list is the 2023 Subaru Forester. Remember, this is the 5-year cost, not the overall cost. The third one on their list is the 2023 Subaru Outback, and we have the Subaru Ascent, Chevy Tahoe, Ford Bronco, Lexus UX, and Lexus NX on this list. You'll notice Lexus has a whole bunch of them, just like Subaru did. We get into the Acura and the Mercedes. Now, I'm going to give you my opinion on these also, and my personal experience is the Mercedes is going to require constant maintenance, but it will probably be covered if you buy a newer one. It'll probably be covered under their factory service plan. Once you get out of that factory service plan, generally there's a lot more cost associated. In fact, if you look on used cars, if you're looking at used cars that are over about 5-6 years old, Mercedes and BMW a lot of times are very inexpensive. And the reason for that is people know there's a lot of maintenance associated with those. The Acura MDX generally holds its value fairly well, as do the Lexus products. I am not familiar with the UX. Ford Bronco, the experience I have with those is they do have some issues. However, the people that I know that have Broncos or that know Broncos are generally off-roading them and are probably causing some of their own issues. Chevy Tahoe, the larger Chevy products are generally fairly solid up in over 200,000 miles. Subarus, my experience, is more limited because the people that I know that have them are usually driving the older Subaru models. However, my understanding is they go very, very well over 100,000 miles, and then you start having some other minor issues, although there are people that'll swear by them and drive 300,000 miles in a Subaru. And the Hyundai historically had some issues. However, the models up till about 2000 or 2023 seem to be fairly solid and would go 150, 170, even 200,000 miles, and would do it fairly consistently. So if you treat them right, they do seem to go well. I've known people that have Hyundai minivans, or I'm sorry, it was a Kia minivan, so that's a separate product, and they loved it and drove the wheels off that thing over 200,000 miles. Now getting into the cars with the lowest cost to own. Again, these are not ranked, so there is no particular order here, but we have the Subaru Impreza, Honda Accord, which is a very popular platform, been around forever. Subaru BRZ, actually was a little surprised to see that one on the list because it's a performance car, and performance cars aren't usually ranked as the lowest cost to own type of cars. Genesis G70, which is a kind of a newer entrant to the market, but I am hearing good things about the Genesis. And then you get into the Lexus ES and the Lexus LS, and the ES is a smaller version of the LS. It's more of a luxury mid-size car, and of course the Lexus LS is a very long-lived platform that does very well, very smooth car to drive, and is made by Toyota, so you expect it to have very good longevity. So you can see here that we're talking again about the imports being rated much higher. In fact, we don't have any American-made cars here on this list. So, for what that's worth, let's hop over here into this article on consumerreports.com, and this talks about the 10-year maintenance repair costs. Now, one thing that they bring up is they're showing you the 1 to 5 year and the 6 to 10 year, and the importance part of that was, they talk about up earlier in the article, a lot of these companies have a 2, 3, 5 year maintenance plan, and that maintenance plan, of course, brings the cost of maintaining the car way down. And then once you get beyond that, the costs start going up, but they may not be fully reflected. What I thought was really interesting here is they show Tesla as the lowest total 10-year cost of ownership at $5,050. That seems to be a significant change from what you would have expected, especially given all the news articles that you see about Tesla, hating on Tesla or talking about the problems Tesla has. If this is a good, solid study, this would seem to show that Tesla by $200 over 10 years beats the competition. The next ones, though, really take a divergence from all of the other websites that we've looked at so far, with Lincoln and Buick being number 2 and number 3. That is not something I would expect to see with Lincoln or Buick. Lincoln is made by Ford, Buick's made by GM. The Ford and Buick products that I've had do well, especially the Buick ones actually that I've had generally have had some other issues that drove the cost of ownership much higher than that. They're good products, but they are definitely not known as being a lower cost of ownership from some of these others. Now, if we look down here at Toyota, Here's something very interesting. The 5-year cost of ownership, excuse me, is higher than Buick. However, the next few years, excuse me, are lower. So this may mean that Buick covers more items, or they have a maintenance plan or something along those lines. But that is an interesting way for this to look, and an interesting way for it to be ranked. Hyundai actually in this model comes in very close to Toyota with only a $380 difference in 10-year cost of ownership. And if you look at the price differential between those two, you will pay much less for a Hyundai than you will for a Toyota. So if you're looking at dollars and cents, it may make more sense to buy a Hyundai if you can verify this is actually accurate. Buy a Hyundai, save the money, and you'll come out well ahead than the Toyota. However, for my model, generally I'm keeping a car well beyond its 10-year life, and the cost of ownership will be lower. Nissan comes in right behind Hyundai. Ford, Mazda follow up. Chevy and Honda are down further than that. That is actually very surprising, seeing Honda down that far in this list, followed by Jeep, Kia, Volkswagen, Lexus, Chrysler, Cadillac. Subaru, you'll notice we're not even seeing Mercedes or BMW on this list yet until we get way down here. Here's a BMW at $9,800 over the 10 years, and Mercedes-Benz at $13,100. Now, this is not going to be true for every single BMW or every single Mercedes-Benz. However, my experience is that you do need to maintain these cars. They will go a long time. They're very comfortable. They're fun to drive. The BMWs that I've had are extremely fun to drive. However, you know that you are going to maintain that. They're not hard to maintain, and there's a lot of aftermarket support. There's lots of forums that you can go on that'll show you how to do things and identify the issues, but you are going to pay as you go. And then, of course, you get down into Porsche, and no surprise, bringing up the last is Land Rover. My wife loves Land Rovers and loves the body style, but as she has learned more and more about them, she's realized that those are not cheap cars to own and maintain. So the bottom line from this video is do your research when you're buying a used car. You'll notice that in all of these websites, except for a couple instances, they're not talking about specific models. You will want to make sure that the model you are buying has a good track record. You'll want to get a Carfax or a vehicle history report. A lot of times you can check with a local dealership and they can pull up the VIN number and find out the service history of your specific car if it's been serviced at the dealership. And if it has, you'll be able to know if they were doing the oil changes on time, keeping up on recalls, keeping up on the other service items. Those are the type of things that you'll want to see. If you're getting an older car, you'll want to find out, do they have a timing chain versus a timing belt? That makes a big difference because timing chains generally go much longer, 100, 200,000 miles, than a belt that may go 75 to 100,000 miles or less. And you'll have that additional maintenance cost, which can easily run $1,000 or more just for that one single service. Circling back to the cheapest car to own or the lowest cost to own is the one you can work on. So there's one reason that a lot of people who buy Jeeps like Jeeps is they're so easy to modify, but they're also easy to maintain and work on. Smaller cars with the V6 or 4-cylinder engines a lot of times are easier to get to than something that has a V8 or an 8-cylinder engine packed into it. All of these things factor into, and if you are able to do the work on your own car, you will save a significant amount of money. It is crazy how much money you can save if you do that. So keep that in mind also. If you can work on your car, or if your significant other can work on your car, then a lot of these costs of ownership that we're seeing on these websites becomes irrelevant, and it only matters down then what your knowledge level is and what your comfort level is working on those cars. I hope this video has been helpful. If it has, give us a like down below. If you'd like to see more content like this or other questions that someone may ask their dad, do subscribe to the channel, and if you know someone who would benefit from this, consider sharing. Thanks for being here. We'll see you on the next one.